Rolling. Because what you're about to hear may completely change the way you understand the disappearance of Sebastian Rogers. For nearly 2 years, everyone believed one thing, that Sebastian walked out of his home in the middle of the night and vanished into the dark. But a growing number of investigators, search and rescue experts, and case followers are now asking a far deeper, far more unsettling question. What if Sebastian never left the house at all? This isn't speculation. This is about the facts we do know, the details we still don't, and the gaps in the earliest hours of this case that have never, even today, been fully resolved. To understand why this question matters so much, let's rewind, not just to the night Sebastian disappeared, but to the atmosphere inside that home and the chain of events that investigators, family members, and an entire community have been trying to piece together ever since. It was late on the night of February 25th, 2024, in Hendersonville, Tennessee. A quiet Sunday, a normal evening, nothing dramatic, nothing alarming, nothing that suggested the next morning would become the beginning of one of the most perplexing missing person mysteries the state had ever seen. Inside the home, everyone had already gone to bed. Lights off, doors locked. A routine night in a family that had no reason to expect anything unusual. Sometime after midnight, Sebastian, a gentle, soft-spoken 15-year-old diagnosed with autism and a rare chromosomal condition, was said to be in his room. His mother heard a noise and told him to settle down and go back to sleep. That moment, small and ordinary, would later become one of the final confirmed interactions before everything shifted. By morning, he was gone. No shoes were missing from the doorway. No phone was taken. He didn't even own one. No backpack, no jacket, no personal belongings. Even his glasses, which he relied on every single day, were left behind on the nightstand. And the flashlight, the one authorities originally believed he might have used if he walked out on his own, wasn't missing either. It was found plugged in, fully intact, still charging exactly where it had always been. Search teams flooded the area almost immediately. 9 units swept the woods. Helicopters scanned from above. Drones mapped out terrain. Hundreds of volunteers walked miles of farmland, creeks, and wooded trails. But despite all that effort, despite an unprecedented level of community involvement, not a single verified piece of physical evidence has ever surfaced. No footprints. No items dropped along a trail. No camera sightings. Nothing. And that's the part that continues to haunt this case. The detail that makes investigators, experts, and everyday people stop and ask the same question again and again. How can someone disappear so completely without leaving any trace at all? As the months passed and every major search effort came up empty, attention slowly but inevitably shifted back to the part of the story investigators always consider the most critical, the first hour. That narrow window of time, the period between when someone is last confirmed safe and when they are first discovered missing, often holds the clues that determine the entire direction of a case. And in Sebastian's situation, that first hour became the most heavily discussed, most puzzling, and most unanswered portion of the timeline. People began asking the most basic but essential questions. What exactly happened inside that home before the 911 call was made? Who was the last person to physically see Sebastian? What sounds were heard, and at what times? Were any doors opened or closed during the night? When did each adult wake up, and what did they notice first? None of these questions are accusations. They're the standard questions raised in any missing child investigation, because the details inside the home often determine what happened outside of it. Yet in this case, those details have remained unusually thin. The timeline has never been fully clarified publicly, and that lack of clarity leaves a gap that people naturally try to fill. Because typically, when someone leaves a home in the middle of the night, something changes. A door latch clicks. A floorboard creaks. A pet reacts to movement. A neighbor hears footsteps in gravel. A security camera across the street registers a shadow or a flicker of motion. Something, even something small, almost always shifts. But in Sebastian's case, that first hour remains blurry, confusing, missing several key pieces that investigators have never shared, possibly because they don't have them or because they're holding them for investigative reasons. No confirmed noise, no confirmed movement, no confirmed sighting, And when the most important part of the timeline is filled with uncertainty, not because people are hiding information, but because nothing has been verifiably established, theories begin to form. They grow, multiply, and evolve, not out of malice, but out of desperation to understand how a boy could vanish so silently, so completely, and with no clear starting point at all. To keep things grounded, here is what law enforcement has officially and repeatedly confirmed. Not speculation, not rumor, but the information investigators themselves have put on record. Despite all the online theories and debates, the Sumner County Sheriff's Office, the TBI, and the FBI have stated the same core point over and over again. None of the family members, including Sebastian's stepfather, have been charged with anything. Every adult in the home that night has been interviewed, in some cases multiple times, and each one sat for questioning, clarified timelines, and cooperated with searches. Investigators didn't simply take statements and walk away. They searched the home top to bottom. They examined the yard, the property lines, the tree-lined nearby fields, and every path leading out of the neighborhood. They reviewed statements, checked them against physical evidence, analyzed timelines, and went through digital data. It wasn't a quick or surface-level process. It was extensive and methodical, exactly what you would expect in a case involving a vulnerable missing teenager. And after all that, authorities publicly stated that they have found no evidence showing that anyone inside the home harmed Sebastian or participated in any wrongdoing. That doesn't mean they have all the answers. It doesn't mean the case is solved. But it does mean that so far, there is nothing that points directly to criminal actions by anyone in the household. And that matters, especially when online discussions often drift far beyond what the actual evidence supports. But even with those confirmations, one enormous question still hangs over the entire case. The question that continues to trouble investigators, search experts, and people who have studied missing person cases for decades. Why is there zero physical evidence showing Sebastian walked away? No footprints in the soft ground around the house. No scent trail that K-9 teams could follow. No clothing, no objects, no abandoned items. No confirmed doorbell camera footage showing him leaving. For a teenager to vanish without a trace is more than unusual. It's extremely rare. In most missing person cases, even when the circumstances are confusing or chaotic, there is something left behind. A shoe print, a blurry camera clip, a dropped item, a movement detected on a home security system, or even a partial scent trail. But here, nothing. That absence, the complete lack of physical clues, is what continues to fuel the questions. Not because people are trying to assign blame, but because a disappearance defies the patterns typically seen in similar cases. When evidence is missing, uncertainty grows. And in the space left by that uncertainty, theories form, evolve, and multiply, all because the most basic question still has no answer. How does a boy simply vanish without leaving even the smallest trace behind? Online discussions, social media experts, and true crime analysts have locked onto a very specific issue: the environment inside the home. Why? Because if Sebastian did walk out, something should show it. Ignoring emotion and focusing strictly on logistics, experts agree. A boy walking barefoot in the cold should leave some sign. A child with autism, startled or confused, would typically react in noticeable ways. A scent trail, even a faint one, should exist for dogs to follow. But there was nothing. This has led many people to ask, not accuse, but question, whether everything that happened inside the home that night has been fully explained. Some believe there are gaps or inconsistencies that still need clarity. Others believe there may be nothing more to reveal, that the case is simply more complicated than it appears. But the absence of evidence, especially in missing child cases, always raises more questions than answers. To be absolutely clear, this part is based only on confirmed public information. Sebastian's stepfather was the person who called 911, cooperated with searches, spoke with investigators multiple times. And according to law enforcement, his statements were reviewed and vetted. There is no confirmed proof that he had anything or harmed anyone. No facts that show involvement. No charges. But in cases where a child disappears without explanation, every action, every recollection, and every minute is examined and re-examined, because investigators must rule out every possibility. And when nothing else adds up, the questions about the home become louder. So here we are, 2 years later. Hundreds of search hours, tens of thousands of volunteer hours. And still, not a single confirmed trace of Sebastian outside that home. So the question remains, and it's one investigators can't ignore. If Sebastian truly walked away, where is even the smallest piece of evidence proving it? And if no such evidence exists, then what does that mean about what really happened that night?